Here's my opinion from my work. All right, I noticed everything has a pattern. So let's say, I tell everybody the reason I'm a little different as a psychic is I use all my skills. And what bothers me about people is they don't look at the opportunity they have. Let's say you're psychic. And I tell people, why not pinpoint where on a map, because I do what's called, you can use remote viewing or dowsing or whatever you want to use, whatever talent. And you could pinpoint where he sleeps. You can pinpoint where he eats daily. You can pinpoint where, because according to what I've seen and read, they go from one point to another. For example, they have Sasquatch in what, New Orleans, but they don't call it that. They have Sasquatches in South Carolina, but they don't call it that. And what I'm thinking is they have to go from north to south or south to north. That's what it looks like to me, because you get tired of the cold, they're going to go south. And I was reading an article on Facebook about a guy who all his chickens are gone. Yum. But, I mean, wouldn't it take a lot of chickens to feed this guy? I mean, so he's going to go from his nest, where he may have his kids, if he has kids. I mean, they've been around forever, so they have to have some kind of, because they look like mammals, big, hairy, furry things. And then they go to wherever they sleep, and then they go to a feeding location, whether it's berries or it's a chicken farm. My cousin just had 20 chickens stolen, and she didn't look for footprints. I begged her to look for footprints. And, she was a non-believer. And I said, well, if you go put your chickens back and, buy new chickens, you're going to run into the same thing again. Now they know that your chickens are there.
Oh, yeah.
And, and you know what's interesting that I find with the Bigfoot is with the chickens, you don't find a lot of the feathers sitting around. The feathers are gone. It's like he just picks up a chicken and maybe he eats it. I don't know how he does it. I mean, have you seen a cat my cats will eat a bird, including the beak. I don't know how or why, but they do.
Well,
you got a take on that one?
Well, we got a couple of cats, and we had a couple more, but they finally passed from old age. But I know that they would come, and I'd be on the porch, or they would bring on the porch a bird, and, the next minute they run off, and then the next thing you find part of the bird, and the only part of the bird that's left is usually the legs and the feet.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If a Bigfoot is out there, go pinpoint where you think he normally sleeps. So maybe you don't want to go to his sleeping nest, because then you're going to wake him up and piss him off, and he's going to get grumpy. So instead of that, go to his feeding zone where he's standing up there in full view of being 8 to 10 feet, whatever his height is. And then go over to, so you want to go over to apparently they eat berries. And then you go over to where a chicken nest might be, or some other kind of bird nest might be, where he goes regularly because he knows he's stealing it. And see if you can catch him on film that way, because a lot of these hunters are always using the film footage, which is great. I mean, you can see something. You don't know what the heck the blob is, but there's something there, and it's very suspicious. And I guess what amazes me is, why do you keep hunting in the woods? Why not have him come to you? He's got to eat. He's got to sleep. He's got to hide. So, okay, leave his hiding zone alone. Go to where he eats. Doesn't that make sense to you from your experience from interviewing people that have seen him?
I think so. I mean, the problem I have, being a talk show host, I try to be neutral. But the problem is I ran into a Bigfoot along with my friend. And it's not an imaginary thing. I saw it. I know what it did. I know how scared it was. I do get people on here that they say that Bigfoot, talks to them through orbs, or Bigfoot, communicates with them emotionally. I didn't have any of that experience. All the experience I had was a big loud scream, and it came after us like you wouldn't believe. What happened is we went into its territory. I mean, let's face it, we went there like a beginning of June up in the Canadian Rockies, which there was still snow off the sides of the road yet. I mean, and it still was snowing off and on in places up there. So, I mean, not many people would go out and hiking. And this place was, the closest little area was about 15 miles away. There was like a little gas station store. And that's another thing that scared me, because we went in there and the guy knew that me and my friend were really shook up. And, he said, well, where are you from? And we told him we were from the States. And he goes, well, at least I know you don't have guns because they're not allowed, to come into our country. But do you have bear spray? We were so naive. We didn't even have bear spray to protect ourselves. So even if we
I didn't even think about that. Good. That's good to know.
Well, what scared me is he said about a week before that, in that area, there was a woman that her and her husband were out hiking or doing something, and he survived. She didn't survive. And by the time they got back, with a rescue, she was already half eaten by bears.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I wish I would have been smarter. I don't know what would happen if I would have, all of a sudden got brave and stopped and let this thing catch up to us, and then tried to spray bear spray in his face. I think it probably would have made him madder yet.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I got to tell you this. If you think about it this way, if you go into his den, like I said, and he's sleeping, you're gonna upset him. My kid comes in the room sometimes, and she puts on too much perfume or something, and I'm sure I say to her, "Stop putting on so much stuff. You're going to attract the wrong attention." What's the difference with a human going into a territory? I mean, not while he's sleeping necessarily, but you're walking into his territory, and you're not wearing cologne or anything, but you are wearing deodorant. You are, let's say you ate garlic last night. You think that guy's not going to smell it? Bigfoot's going to smell it. I mean, we can't be naive about what we're headed into. I mean, you have to be fully aware of, hey, we smell differently. American Indians said we stink. I mean, to us, they stink. So there's got to be something out there that the techniques they're using, the Bigfooters, the hunters, is not working. So try for the food situation, try for the dowsing that we're going to talk about, the dream work we're going to talk about, and I think finally somebody's going to catch one. But I think there is a naivete about going out there and getting something. I mean, it's so silly. It hasn't worked so far, so move on and try the next, that old cliche, try the next zigzag. If he zigs, you zag. If he zags, you zig. I mean, and I think it's going to be with the food chain. I mean, the food chain is the critical part for this thing, whatever it is, whether it's mammal or whatever. I mean, I was watching one thing one time, and a woman was taking pictures in her backyard. There was definitely something behind the trees. They didn't seem upset. They had been coming and going for, I think she said, 8 years. And she even took pictures in the trees, like 100 feet up in the air. And it looked like baby monkeys. Now, I mean, she was in like Washington State or something, and I thought to myself, now that is creepy. And it was not a bear. They didn't have the ears. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. They had more of a monkey face, just like Bigfoot. And I thought, well, where are you going to put your baby if you want to hide your family? I think in a tree is a good idea.
And probably what I noticed, because a lot of people afterwards, especially talking about it on the show, they said, well, why didn't you take a picture of it? And I said, well, when something that big and that scary is running after you at full force, you're trying, realistically, it could have caught us. I think it just wanted us gone. It wanted us out of there. And it did a good job doing that. But what I did notice, that its arms were longer than its legs, noticeably longer.
Wow, that's creepy.
Yeah, it was.
Well,
is.
I mean, it's definitely the unexplained. I mean, everybody is taking the wrong technique to catch this guy. I mean, put out 100 chickens. I mean, how much does a chicken cost? If you're going to invest, do it right. Put the chickens in this little fenced area and see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's an approach, right?
Like well, it's better than some of people's approach of, bringing a little bit of this and a little bit of this, or bringing a jar of peanut butter and putting it down on the ground. I think you really got to, if you're going to lure one in, you got to have more than that. Like a couple of chickens, yeah, and some other type of foods, vegetables and all that stuff there. Enough of it where it's going to be, like, oh, wow, I'm going to go for this, rather than, I don't think a jar of peanut butter or, a little bit of stuff in a bowl is going to bring one to you. I really don't.
No, because you know what? I'll tell you what. have you ever noticed they tend to go for more of the fruit or the veggies? I mean, peanut butter is a made human product. He doesn't make food. I was on the internet one day, and I don't want to say I'm more debate oriented when it comes to the paranormal. I sort of am, because of the fact that I think there's a solution for almost everything, because I've worked on so many weird projects. I mean, I tend to get the weird, hard projects. Like, oh, we want you to go find this, or we want you to go find that. And I'm looking at them, really? And I solve it, and they just go, how did you do that? So tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to help your clients learn how to solve it and say, oh, I did it. I get it. I see what she's talking about. But again, people on Bigfoot, which I think is, I'm definitely couch potato sitting there watching it out of total curiosity, but I think people should try the fruits, the veggies. I mean, the most impressive show I ever saw so far on it with YouTube was a woman who left out lots of fruits and veggies. And I thought, she has something there. And everybody else, I've got my camera. Put the camera with the chickens, with the fruit and veggies. Peanut butter? I don't think so.
Hey, and what's the worst that can happen? A Bigfoot doesn't come, right? And you have a chicken dinner that weekend or the next weekend. Hey.
Yeah, or you could certainly go to your friend and say, hey, I mean, you saw how many Bigfoot hunters are out there. I'm sure some of them own a chicken farm, or there are some chickens that cannot be eaten by human consumption, so maybe they could volunteer some chickens. I mean, I live near Tyson Foods. You could go to Tyson Foods and leave some that are already chopped up that they use for pet food, because that's what they do. Some pet food is for the cats or the dogs kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I'm sure they're adding stuff with it, but I would do it before they add stuff to it. I would say, hey, I want to buy some of your leftovers, the guts and all that stuff. But that might allure him. That might be the way to do it.
Yeah, I think it makes more logical sense, at least to me. Now, I'm not a Bigfoot hunter. I just ran into one accidentally. But I will say this. Before then, I grew up with a family who went camping every weekend during the summer, and plus the 2-week vacation. And then when I got married, we have 8 kids. Well, they're all adults now. But when they were young, I used to go camping, too, every weekend. After that experience, I have not been into a forest. Simply zero, won't do it. And because that gave me such a scare in my life and a bad taste in my mouth that I don't, with my luck, I don't want to run into a second one.
No, I think there are certain limits. When I see shows or people reporting on Facebook, here's a story, one of my favorite stories about my sister saying, California is not as safe as you think it is. People go bike riding in the mountains, with those wonderful mountain bikes. And they had mountain lions sitting there waiting for their food consumption. And it was humans riding their bicycle by. He jumps on the human, riding the bicycle, and bites them. And then you hear that some of the people survive it. And, of course, you know what, they go for the throat area. That's what they go for. And, of course, the people have permanent scars and stuff. They look like they got into a battle fight. But their fight was with a mountain lion. And my sister goes, no, you can't go up there.
Oh, yeah. But
that's crazy. That's frightening.
Have you ever tried to figure out what happens, and it has been happening in our national forest system? Going back a couple years ago, the statistic was like 14,000 people since 1900 has gone into our forest, U.S. forest system, and gone in and never came out. And no.
Yeah. Well, I do read a lot up on missing persons because that's one of my specialties. But I will tell you that there's so many factors. I'll tell you one of my cold cases that is really neat, and I'll share this with you because it did include a dream. I got a call, I think 2 years later, from a man who went missing. He was parasailing. I hope everybody knows what that is. It's like this really cool parachute, but it's only a partial parachute, and you can pull it left or right or go forward or whatever, just a general idea. And a man called me, I don't even know how he got my name. I mean,